how not permanent everything is. That was really not eloquent, but whatever. We'll get started. I often find myself stumbling over my insecurities, afraid I can't outrun the preconceptions placed upon me. These fears building my foundation on the box of mirrors, making each assumption bounce back and forth again and again and again until they're caught. My body kept going faster, my arms blossoming, catching enough air, I fly low and waltz with the angels.
I have a bright idea, mixing poetry with music. Poetry with music, it will sell.
My name is Loung, and I'm a storyteller.
Well, I think that was just kind of irrelevant from like when my writing started. That was just more my first memory of someone reading me a poem and kind of being exposed to what poetry was. Kind of negative, but later on, I think like when I started writing, it's just kind of, it was a gradual thing. I think that actually started from when my speech therapist, I used to have kind of a weird stutter when I was little, and my speech therapist, one of the tasks that I had to do was write a journal entry every night, and when I meet with her every week, we'd go over my journal entries and I'd read them out loud. So that's, I think, where my writing started, kind of journaling every night. When you walk into the space, you consider yourself a poet. Anytime you really like take that leap of faith to grab a pen or pencil and start scribbling stuff down on the paper, you're working towards that final goal, you know? You're working towards that kind of peace. Like as I'm writing, I'm never really thinking about what I'm writing. I just really am focused on how I make people feel and how, if they're getting the message I want them to. And so I think as long as you're willing to sit down for a couple of minutes and listen to me read something, or listen to me even talk to you, just talk about something real, then it doesn't really matter what you call it afterwards. Obviously, it's a little bit of a shot to call, like, to say that spoken word or this kind of poetry is inferior, but, you know, you're always going to have people like that. My throat sharpened up the words, wrote myself a rifle and fire. Projectiles of fire and brimstone shot from my mouth, cracked in the air like thunder from my mouth. Everyone always says that nothing's really original anymore, you know? That everyone's done something back in the day, and all you're doing now is just kind of repeating it. I try not to believe in that. I try to believe that everything that's coming out of my head is mine. I think taking these really rough and raw emotions that I feel sometimes and showing them to you in a way that through comedy, through something funny, allows you to kind of take it and not have it burn you, not have it make you feel the same way, but kind of understand it in a different light. It's kind of like handing someone like a really hot coal and like you don't want to like touch it, but I think like kind of cooling it off and covering it in comedy, something very light, lets you kind of hold it in your hands and study it a little bit more, kind of digest it better. My history will not deteriorate, my mark will not be covered up in white, for my identity cannot be defined by color. You see, I just want to show you my emotions. I don't have to show you examples, point 1, 2, 3, as to when I felt that way. You don't do that in poetry, and I think that gives so much freedom for artists to kind of do whatever they want. We'll be buried 6 feet under, along with all those people who try to make my life a little worse. I think growing up, I've kind of dealt with people all my life who have made something else inferior. I think the hardest thing to do is to not put yourself down. I struggle with all the time. I always struggle with like, wow, is this really good? Is this really what I want it to be? But I think what kind of motivates me to move on is the fact that when I write, I always have thought of it as a hobby. I never really thought of it as something more. Career-wise, like post-grad, I really want to get into higher education, student affairs, and work with college kids and just basically try to facilitate growth in that way. And I find that like my writing, my poetry would be like a medium for that to kind of go through. In terms of like advice for, I guess, like people who want to start writing poetry, I think as long as you try, as long as you like kind of have picked up that piece of paper before, even if you don't write your original work or just read other people's work, I think like whatever kind of adds on to this kind of big pool of creativity that we have in this world. I think you can consider yourself a poet then. I think it's the fact that whatever you write is yours, and whatever you write and whatever is yours is gold. I think the great thing about performing poetry, the great thing about performing anything really, comedy, music, poetry, is that it's rhetorical. You're not asking for anything back. So this fourth wall that you have built between you and the audience is very thick. During the performance, there's nothing said back to you, so I think that gives me at least a lot of liberty to say what I want.
This next one is definitely one of my favorite poems that I've ever written. I took a summer class, a creative writing class, and one of the assignments was to write a poem based on a picture. And at first, the picture really made me think about my own identity and what it means. So this one's called Fly Low. When I told my mama I wanted to fly, she made me wings. Wings of white orchid petals, wings that smelled like summer's end. Wings that wooed the air around them, coaxing it to dance along their fragile surface. Each wing laced to my back, the rope crossing my chest, cradling me, akin to a loving mother. Arms bare and soft, surrounding her newborn son, bracing him for the undeserving life he was given. With each tequila-soaked stomp, my father's lower jaw pounded against his cheekbones. I could see the words fleeing from his mouth, stumbling over each other, only to fall out of earshot, his tongue managing to flail hard enough to fling some words far enough for our ears to salvage. He told me I couldn't fly. Wearing fairy wings was for homos, and I was better off sewing dresses for girls and other homos like me. Each syllable tugged at my clothes, finding their way into my throat, scathing it with holy embers. I felt like I could breathe fire, like I could breathe the word of God into my father's soul, not to save him, but to damn him. My throat sharpened up the words, wrote myself a rifle and fired. The projectiles of twisting fire and brimstone cracked the air like thunder from my mouth. I don't give a fuck about what you think. And the momentum of what I said caught on. I realized I was moving, my wheels screaming and burning, wanting to stop, but my body kept going faster, my arms blossoming. Catching enough air, I fly low and waltz with the angels. Thanks.